are you? And where are you going? What do you want?
Hello and welcome to Trust and Estates Weekly. I'm your host, Kevin Bemmel, and I'm here every Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time to talk about estate planning and trust and probate administration, primarily from the standpoint of professionals who help people with these issues, but also for you if you're dealing with your own estate and trust issues and or want to be able to speak more intelligently, or more, I shouldn't say intelligently, more knowledgeably with the professionals who are helping you in this process. So, kind of timely, I guess. Life follows art or art follows life. I'm not sure which. I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday, and she was telling me about a situation in which she found herself in a dispute with the heirs of an estate when she had been made a beneficiary of the trust. It was one of the estate documents, and had been given some other um, property, basically, and the children of the decedent uh, were really ticked off about this, and they launched litigation and kind of a smear campaign, and in the end, my friend ended up compromising somewhat, uh, but you could hear it in her voice. She's still, I think, at least a little bit traumatized by this experience, and unfortunately, it's not unusual. The knives come out when someone dies and there's any kind of significant money on the table. And the fact of the matter is, what may be significant money to you would be different for me or for anybody else. So for some people, an estate of $100,000, if they're going to get a tenth of it, it's not going to make any real difference in their life. Whereas for other people, that would make a material difference in the quality of their life, right? So there's no way to judge an amount of money that is worth disputing in that sense. And it comes in all sizes and shapes, but I think what it really comes down to is that um, when the opportunity is there, if an estate plan has not been properly socialized with the beneficiaries, they are more likely to create a dispute, and a dispute that will have permanent damage on relationships going forward. And I think we tend to consider disputes among beneficiaries to happen when there is no will or trust, when somebody dies intestate, but that is not necessarily the case. So even when there is a well drawn up estate plan, people will come up for reasons to create a dispute. One of those is if, for example, if the decedent made changes to the estate plan favoring someone who was not an heir previously. Okay, it's not unusual. I should say it's not unusual for the heirs who were going to get more, but for this interloper to make accusations that the decedent was not of sound mind when this change was made, that there was some sort of unsavory behavior that went on between the decedent and the new beneficiary. Now, that's not to say that these things don't happen. Yes, they do happen sometimes, and I have seen cases where that has happened. However, uh, when uh, uh, when a decedent has, prior to death, of course, properly drawn up estate planning documents naming a particular individual as a beneficiary, that reflects the decedent's wishes. Now, you know, people will argue, well, she was a gold digger and she wormed her way into his confidence, and that's how she got the money. Well, that may be partly true, but it may also be equally true that she took care of this person and devoted a significant part of her life to taking care of the person, gave up time, freedom of action, whatever. So, as I'm fond of saying, two things can be true at the same time. Okay, and you know if a decedent wants to give someone money and the decedent feels that he or she got adequate services rendered, well, you know what, it's not our money, right? It's their money to dispose of how they choose. And I would add, by the way, that oftentimes this particular situation where the heirs are saying, well, there was an interloper there. They, you know, wheedled their way into my, father's good graces. One of the questions I have in my mind is, where were you while this person was doing that? Was your father so lonely, so disconnected from familial support that someone was able to do that? And if so, well, to a large extent, that's you have the responsibility for that. If you had been a more supportive child, or whatever, relationship, grandchild, whatever it is, relationship to the decedent, then it's a lot less likely that that person would have wheedled themselves into the good graces. Okay. Now, again, that's not to say that such things never happen under nefarious circumstances. They certainly do. There are situations where someone is a caregiver and they get, you know, um, PII, things like social security numbers and bank account numbers. They get that information out of the person for whom they're caring. And then when that person dies, they very quickly get a hold of those accounts and spirit the money away before the administration of the estate can formally begin. And clearly that is, elder abuse, it's fraud, it's all of those things. So there this is I in no way am I excusing that kind of action, but where the decedent has made the person a part of his estate plan, and the distribution to that particular beneficiary has occurred through the normal administration of the person's estate. Well, I mean, maybe there was something nefarious that went on, but oftentimes it's as much the disinterest and or neglect of the person's family members and his gratitude that someone cared enough about him to really look after him, take care of him during the waning months, years of his life, that has motivated him to make this particular bequest, whatever it is. So, some initial food for thought about this issue of managing beneficiary conflicts. So while I've talked about how conflicts arise and such, and have made a few, mentioned a few thoughts on that just now, what I'm going to be talking about on this show is specifically what you should do if you're the personal representative of the estate, in order to make sure that you are dealing with the conflict in a way that it's not going to come back and harm you. Okay, there's a certain vulnerability we have as personal representatives, and when there are disputes going on, There is no reason why the disputants will not drag the personal representative, the executor or the trustee, into them if they think it's to their benefit to do so. Okay, so I've got a few thoughts on this topic that I'll share with you. First of all, if if discussions with a beneficiary or any other party to the administration of an estate take a hostile turn, the first thing you should do is require that all further communication be in writing. Okay. The problem with verbal communication is there's no, unless it's recorded, which in many cases would not be permitted and or would not be permissible in court. The problem with verbal communication is there's no way of proving what was actually said. Okay. And so by requiring that all communication be in writing, specifically, by the way, at least email, text messages in most jurisdictions, I'm not giving any legal advice here, but I believe this is the case. Text messages in most jurisdictions do not constitute a writing in the sense that they can be submitted to court as evidence of what somebody wrote. But emails, generally speaking, are admissible, and so communication once there appears to be some hostility developing, communication um, uh, needs to happen solely through email. Okay. And if the person calls you up, the response is send me an email. I understand you have something to convey, send me an email. Okay, I've asked you to send me an email twice. I'm going to ask you one more time and then I'm going to hang up. Please send me an email with your concerns. Click. Okay. After doing that several times, while they may still attempt to call and discuss something, it will reduce when they do that, at least in my experience. Now, this can get a little more complicated when you have staff or people helping with the administration of the estate. Maybe there are other people involved, a real estate agent, etc. When there are other people involved, I let those other people know, do not communicate with this individual except through email. Okay? Don't have telephone conversations, don't get into text messages, email and email alone. And then I make it clear to the person, all people associated with the administration of this estate, including X, Y, Z, A, B, C, however many people it is, will only communicate with you by email. If you call them and attempt to discuss any matter with them, I have directed them to say to you, please submit this by email and hang up the call. Okay? Can't make it clearer than that. Okay? The reason you want that is you want to have those emails. So, although they may send you voicemails, they may send you text messages. I mean, it's all good and well, but and if they do that, you're going to want to archive those as well, if to show nothing else that you were being harassed, or if they're making social media posts, hostile social media posts. What you want to do is document all hostile communications, and the best way to do that is through email. Now, if they send you, if they call you and leave you voicemail messages, so you'll want to document those voicemails, including getting a timestamp on them. Pardon me. If you do in-person meetings, okay, it's wise to have somebody there who is documenting the meeting. Okay, you may not necessarily need to have a court reporter, but and these days you could have an AI bot. Especially if it's a virtual meeting, AI bots will essentially transcribe a conversation. Okay. In any non-email communication you have with a hostile beneficiary, I highly recommend that you in some way document that communication, send it to the beneficiary in an email. So this is to confirm the message that you left me on voicemail on such and such a date, saying the following, put in the text. As I have informed you previously, all communication must be made by email. And so I will not be responding to this communication. This is sent to you so that you will know that, to reinforce that all communication have to be sent by email. Okay. Same with text messages. Just take a screenshot of the text message, send it in a confirming email that this type of communication is no longer permitted due to the, whatever of the situation, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay. Social media posts. Do not respond to hostile social media posts. There's nothing to be gained by doing that. Okay. I would take a screenshot or download a PDF of them if you can. And again, send an email, okay, to the beneficiary. Now, if there are multiple beneficiaries, if you're getting hostile communications, I would send them to all beneficiaries. And by the way, I would also copy your lawyer on these communications so that so that everybody knows what's going on. Okay. Uh, Other beneficiaries may have some control over the person who's being hostile toward you, and they may engage with that person and explain to them, this is not helping the situation. It's only going to delay the administration, and you're causing a lot of waste of time and energy. Please stop doing this, or something like that. Okay. So that's kind of step number one, where you're still communicating with the hostile beneficiary or beneficiaries, but now you're restricting the communication solely to email and documenting all communications that you get. That's kind of, like I said, step number one. Step number two is to restrict communication to your lawyer. Okay. So in this case, you tell hostile beneficiaries, you may no longer communicate directly with me. You may only communicate through my lawyer. Okay. Now, uh, as a personal representative, you are not required to accept abusive phone calls or threatening emails or social media posts or whatever, or even defamatory posts or text messages or whatever. That is not part of your job description. Okay. And so what you want to do is, number one, get those beneficiaries who are acting hostile, move the communication to your lawyer, because first of all, whatever your lawyer says, you are not bound by what he says. Okay. He's acting as your representative, but you still are the decision maker. So it removes the decision making process. It removes the crush of the decision making process from you by having somebody, yelling at you and demanding that you do X, Y, or Z. Okay, that's one thing that it does. Number two, it adds additional documentation. So if the heir starts getting threatening, physically threatening, or something like that, now you have grounds to go to the court and potentially get, a gag order against this beneficiary or something like that. Because now the beneficiary has gone too far. They're causing a materially negative impact on the administration of the estate. Okay. And I would add, by the way, that if the beneficiary is getting really threatening, you have now the ability to go to the police and let them know what's going on if you're concerned at that level. Okay, so next step is to channel communication through your lawyer. Okay, all right. Number three, take threats to your personal safety seriously. Okay, I don't know what the percentage is. It may be 1 out of 100 that's serious. You don't want to be the 1 in 100. Okay, you just don't. So if beneficiaries make threats against you personally, okay, it's one thing for them to be blowing off steam or making nasty remarks about the decedent. You know, that person is gone. Okay, that may just be, kind of blowing off steam. When they start targeting you with their vitriol and threats, okay, that I wouldn't dismiss I wouldn't dismiss those as just empty anger on their part. Okay, now there obviously context matters. You may happen to know the beneficiary really well, and the two of you have a history of kind of blowing off steam in conversations, and sometimes the conversations get heated, and you have experience on how this person actually behaves. Okay, that may be a little bit different. But the typical situation of a personal representative would be they don't particularly know the beneficiaries that well. They don't know how they really behave. And so you have to take their threats seriously. So if let's say you're an executor and you're living in the decedent's home, maybe you were taking care of the decedent prior to his death, and you're continuing to live in the home, and maybe the beneficiary who's threatening you, maybe it's a sibling, and that sibling has keys to the house as well. Well, I would change the locks on that home. Okay. I mean, there's no reason why you need to leave yourself vulnerable for some, notion that, well, we're all entitled to access to, mom's home. Well, once mom is deceased, if you were living there before her death, okay, in general, you have a right to continue there after her death. Okay, there may be some qualifications to that, but once she's not there, there is no reason for the other beneficiaries to necessarily have access to the place in which you live. So change the locks. Okay. By the way, merely getting the keys, of course, is not sufficient because they may have made copies or whatever. Okay. So change the locks. Make sure the windows securely lock. Okay, those kind of things. If you have a security service, make sure the security service knows that you have received threats from a particular individual, but the beneficiary. Okay. You vary your routines. This is especially important when you're an executor or personal representative, a family member, and the other family members know you. They know where you work out. They know where you like to have dinner every Thursday night or whatever it is. So in those cases, vary your routine. Okay, make sure that they're not going to catch you kind of unawares. Okay. And if you think the threats are credible, as I mentioned a moment ago, file a police report. Okay. The police may not actively do anything, but if you don't file a report and it happens multiple times, the third or fourth time it happens, the police are as powerless to do anything as they were the first time. Okay. However, if you file 3, 4 reports, okay, especially if the threats are escalating, now the police have the ability to do something. First of all, they can go talk to the person, and they have in front of them all the reports, and they can say, we've had 4 reports on threats that you've made to such and such. We're coming to investigate this. Okay, that alone may give the beneficiary who's making threats room for pause. Okay, let's take a break. When life brings unexpected changes, managing inherited property shouldn't add to your stress. Magnum Properties specializes in probate and trust real estate management. We handle the complexities while you focus on what matters most. From property maintenance to tenant relations, from legal compliance to maximizing value, we're your trusted partner through every step. Magnum Properties Inc., turning property challenges into peace of mind. Call us today at 213 264 4396 or visit magnumprops.com. So, we're back at Trust and Estates Weekly, and I'm talking about managing beneficiary conflict. So, I talked about before the break, document all hostile communication, channel all communications through your lawyer, and take your personal safety seriously. So, next, secure all estate assets immediately. Okay, so if there is a storage room, for example, change the lock on the storage room. If more than one, if the beneficiaries have access online to bank accounts, change that online access. Okay. Now, it is the fact that, as a matter of course, once you become the personal representative of the estate, whether it's a probate and you have letters of administration issued, or whether you're a trustee and so upon the death of the prior trustee, perhaps the grantor, you're now the successor trustee, you need to secure the assets. But it's even more important when one or more of the beneficiaries are hostile, because they may use their disgruntlement with you as grounds to, essentially take what they want or what they think they're entitled to, even though that may not comport with the the proper administration of the estate. Okay, so you also want to make sure that, as well as possible, that they don't damage any assets. So if there's artwork or that sort of thing, you may need to have that. Let's say you have a situation where you're the personal representative, and you and another beneficiary were taking care of your mother prior to her death. Now, mom has passed away, and the situation is turned hostile, but there is valuable property inside the home. Well, so you may need to have that property removed from the home and stored away properly to prevent it from being damaged, and also to prevent it from being, in essence, stolen by the hostile beneficiary. Okay, and of course, the cost of doing that will be borne by the estate, and this is just one more reason why, when disputes in the administration of an estate oftentimes lead to, the beneficiaries receiving less from the estate because the costs of administration have gone up. Okay, but it's certainly within your discretion to incur expenses for the protection of assets. Okay, so if you, again, I would document all of this. Okay, and in a particularly severe case where perhaps it's going to be costly, maybe it's a large estate. There was quite a bit of, let's say, valuable artwork, and you're concerned that the beneficiary who's living there in the house with you might do damage to it. You may want to apply to the court on an ex parte basis for an instruction allowing you to spend the money it'll take to keep that artwork secure. And that would be something to discuss with your lawyer, but it may make sense to do that in order to maintain the value of the estate. Okay, so secure all assets of the estate immediately to prevent them from theft or damage. Okay, next, you want to obtain comprehensive fiduciary insurance. Now, if you are not a professional, that may be difficult. Okay, for professional fiduciaries like me, that type of coverage is available. It's reasonable cost, right? I don't know if any insurance can be said to be low cost anymore these days. Okay. But you want to make sure that you have some kind of executors or administrators insurance. Okay. And you may also want to consider some sort of personal umbrella policy. If you have a high net worth, or not necessarily even a high net worth, but let's say you have a net worth that would make it, shall we say, productive to sue you. Okay. So rather than leave your assets vulnerable, it may make sense to get a personal umbrella policy over and above whatever uh, executor or personal representative insurance policy you're able to obtain. Disappointed beneficiaries, they can file a lawsuit against the executor personally, okay? And they may not have a case, okay, but that doesn't mean that they can't file a lawsuit and burden you with the cost of defending that lawsuit. Okay, so you want to make sure that you document everything you do and that you're properly insured, especially the benefit of fiduciary insurance is they will typically pay for your defense in the event that you are sued, because that is usually the largest cost in dealing with these suits. I can't tell you how many of them are successful. What I can tell you is the expense of litigation can be high, and so that's why it's good to have that coverage. Okay, next, you really just need to prepare yourself for character assassination. Okay. Um, you know, angry beneficiaries they will spread false accusations about your competence, your honesty. They will, you know, they will just say whatever they think is necessary to punish you, even though you've done nothing wrong. Okay. I mean, unfortunately, this is an aspect of human nature, and it would be great if we could inoculate ourselves against it, and inoculate people from committing character assassination. But neither one of those are possible, at least as the according to how the world works today. Okay, now keep in mind that if the character assassination gets to the point where let's say, for example, you're a professional and the character assassination is getting to the point where your professional reputation is so damaged that now people are rejecting you, in hiring you as a professional. So at that point, you may have grounds for a suit against the person because for slander or for defamation of some kind. And if you have provable damages, it may be necessary to have a lawyer threaten such a suit. And of course, this is a legal question to deal that you need to speak to a lawyer about, a lawyer who is knowledgeable in this area of the law. Okay, my understanding is defamation suits can be very difficult to prove. On the other hand, sometimes a well-written, timely letter from a lawyer threatening action if the defamation or the character assassination does not cease and desist, sometimes that can have the proper effect. Okay, but on a kind of a broader sense, when there are disputes and unhappy beneficiaries, you need to kind of steel yourself for what is almost inevitably the maligning of your character that follows. Okay, so as best you can, prepare for character assassination, emotionally, mentally. Okay, and if it gets particularly egregious, you may need to seek legal advice as to what to do to either to stop it and or be compensated if it's caused you a true loss. Okay, next, you really need to create an absolutely unassailable legal record. So you're going to want to work closely with your probate attorney to ensure that every decision you make is legally defensible and properly documented. Okay, one of the best tools for doing this is to, even if you have, full authority, that does not preclude you from applying to the court for some kind of instruction or confirmation of an action that you're contemplating taking. Okay, so in that way, as if let's say, for example, that um, one or more of the beneficiaries is disputing the price at which you sold a piece of real estate. So even though you may have full authority and can sell that property without court confirmation, okay, that doesn't prevent you from nonetheless applying to the court for confirmation. Okay, in so doing, you cut off the disgruntled beneficiary's ability to somehow hold you accountable, because in the end it's not you who made the final decision, the court made the final decision. So although, as I mentioned earlier, they can still sue you, your lawyer will be able to basically say to the court in which you're being sued, Your Honor, this was the court's decision, not my client's decision. Please dismiss this lawsuit. Okay, so but the way to get there, and to be able to proceed with that level of confidence, is to be is to have just a rock solid legal record of the work you did and the decisions that you made. Okay, let's take another break. Probate and Trust TV, your curated source for the most useful and insightful content on estate planning and trust and probate administration, featuring standout professionals like Bill Gross, Paul Brabelet, James Cunningham, and yours truly. Whether you're a lawyer, accountant, real estate professional, or working on your own succession plan, this channel helps you quickly find the clearest, most practical content YouTube has to offer. Subscribe now to Probate and Trust TV. Spend more time learning, less time searching. Okay, so we're back now again at Trusts and Estates Weekly, talking about how to manage beneficiary conflict. So I've given several thoughts. I've got one final thought here, and that is resignation is always an option. Okay, so if if the disgruntled beneficiaries are getting too hostile, too threatening, okay, you have the option to resign. Now, let me add, this is not a pitch for you to hire someone like me who's a professional fiduciary. Okay, I don't mean that. However, oftentimes having a professional come in who's neutral and doesn't carry family baggage can reduce the amount of conflict. Okay, so for example, if you've been if you've been named as the executor in the decedent's will, or you're the successor trustee, and going in that maybe one or more of your siblings is hostile, and it's going to be a conflicted situation, perhaps from the very beginning. So you do not have to accept that appointment or that successor trusteeship. You always have the option of uh, um, of um, of petitioning the court to have someone else fill that role. Okay. Same with being a trustee. Unless the trust has been improperly written, you have the ability to appoint a successor trustee. As a trustee, you generally speaking have the authority to appoint a successor. Okay, and you can do that, and that typically does not need a court hearing. It will require an amendment to the trust, but that can be done by a lawyer, and it can be done pretty quickly and simply. Okay. So, if you're anticipating beneficiary conflict, or if you find yourself in a level of beneficiary conflict that's just not sustainable for you, you're getting physical threats, or maybe the emotional impact of it is so great you're not sleeping, or look, there's all kinds of things that happen to us when we're put under very heavy levels of stress and anxiety. Okay. You don't need to destroy your own well-being in order to fulfill an obligation that you've been put under in a trust or a will. Okay. So in worst case scenario, uh, look at what it would take to resign, and appoint somebody else to fill the role, and then talk with your lawyer and enact that plan. Okay. In the end, uh, there's only so much that we can do to manage beneficiary conflict, and there are situations, and I see them. I'm in at least two of them right now, that there is no way that I'm going to stop the disgruntled beneficiaries from fighting. They want to fight. I think they wake up each day. That's what they want to do. Okay. I mean, I don't think it's a great way to live. I don't even think it's a reasonable way to live. But for some people, they unfortunately they live angry lives. You'll hear the chaplain coming out of me now. This is one of the things I've discovered. Some people, the, anger is all they have. If they give up anger, they're afraid they're going to completely lose their self identity. You can say that's sad. It's difficult. I agree with you, but it is the reality. You could say, well, they really need to get some therapy. Not going to disagree with you, but again, that is the reality for some people, and we're unlikely. It's unlikely that we're going to change that, and so in the end, while we have to do our duty, we don't need to destroy ourselves or materially diminish our lives to do so, when there are other options that we can take. And so, and this is why I left this point to the last one. In the end, resignation may be the only way for you to effectively deal with that conflict. And if so, I would say figure it out and do it, and move on with your life in the sense of getting a semblance of um, sanity back in your life, and and then just support whoever it is that you essentially have take over the role from you, because that person now is going to be on the firing line with the disgruntled beneficiaries, and to have your support will be a crucial part of that new personal representative being able to as effectively as possible manage the situation. Okay, so I thank you very much for joining me today, especially my live viewers. And tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time is my show, Business Lessons from the Military. And on Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time is my show, People Making Money. So 2 more times this week for us to be together. Uh, Once again, thank you very much for joining me. Wishing you a wonderful rest of the day, and signing off as I always do. Marie, darling, you are my belle. Courage at all times.